let's chat about supplies and just how incredibly important they are for your watercolor journey. If you are using supplies that are just like not that great, you're not going to get a great result. It's so important, especially when it comes to watercolor art, to use the correct supplies. So let's start off first by talking about one major thing that's very important, and that is your watercolor paper. There's lots of different watercolor papers on the market. If you go somewhere like Michael's or a local craft store, you'll see Canson watercolor paper. I really don't recommend that paper. I was using it recently and realized that I wasn't getting the result that I needed because the paper is not that good. And I was using that because it was a cheaper paper for me to purchase, but in the end, it's just not gonna get me the result I need. So there is, Strathmore makes a watercolor paper if you're looking for something a little more budget friendly. Their watercolor paper is a lot better than the Canson, so you can use that one. This paper I absolutely love, but it is expensive. And this is actually a watercolor block. So you can see they're all stuck together, and then when I'm done with my painting, I just pull it off. Now this paper is 100% cotton, very high quality. The water just soaks into it so nicely, and I like to do cold pressed paper. So there's hot and cold pressed paper. If you're just starting out with watercolor, I recommend the cold pressed papers because they're gonna soak up the water a little bit better and they're gonna have more texture to them. The hot press papers are really smooth. They have a place in watercolor artwork, of course, but I prefer to go with the cold press paper. Another thing to look for is you always want your paper to be 140 pounds or higher. Anything less than that is not gonna be the quality you need for good watercolor artwork, and it's not gonna be able to soak in the water like you need it to. Second, you need a good brush. I love the Princeton Heritage brushes, the 4050R series, and this is a size 6. This one is not as pointed as it used to be. I need a new one, but you definitely want it to have a point on it. These are great brushes and they're pretty cost friendly. Next, your watercolor palette. I have a big palette here. I like to use the tubed watercolor. Winsor & Newton makes great watercolor paint, but some people prefer the ones that are just hard. Like you can just buy it like this. It's a palette and they come already in here. But for me, I like to use the tubes, and I developed this palette on my own, just by colors that I like to use. And I know it looks like a hot mess, but honestly, I can get some amazing colors out of this. Plus, the awesome thing about watercolor is you never waste paint. All you have to do to wake up the paint is add water, and you'll always have this here, unlike acrylic where you have to throw away the paint when it dries out. So this is nice. I like this style of a palette, but you can there's tons of them on the market. But this one allows me to kind of keep my cool colors together, my warm colors, and mix up everything in these bigger wells. Then, sounds silly, but water. You need water. It doesn't matter what kind of water you use, like tap water is fine, but I like to do 2 water jars. One I like to keep my cool colors in, and one I like to keep my warm colors in. That way I'm not getting murky paint combinations. Another thing you can do is some people like to do one where it's clean water and one where it's dirty water. So you pull from the clean water and you rinse off in the dirty water. Just another option. Something else to consider, if you are wanting to sketch, use an HB pencil, and I recommend a gum eraser. And the reason I recommend the gum eraser is because you don't want to erase so hard that you remove the texture of the watercolor paper. So with a gum eraser, you can kind of push down and pull up some of the graphite from the pencil when you do a sketch before you do the watercolor. All right, oh, sorry, one more thing. Washi tape. So washi tape is nice because if you're not working on a watercolor block, you need your paper to lay flat. So washi tape can do that. And this tape is really easy to remove. It's not gonna pull up your paper or tear it. and it's pretty, I think this cost me about $4, and this will last me for a while. So that's important. If you're not working from a block, you'll need to tape your paper down to the surface that you're working on. All right, that concludes our tools and supplies for watercolor artwork. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me them in the comments below.